Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
How deceptive can be their own achievement, for which a person has been chasing for so long, stepping over all their principles and morals. But not always such a victory brings positive fruits. Sometimes life turns everything 180 degrees, and the man who seemed to have received everything that can only be wished for finds himself at a broken trough. This is exactly the situation that happened in the life of Tony, who always strived to get the best in his life. He was sure that all his decisions will get away with it, that he will be in the win-win situation. But entering the country house in the morning after a stormy and very memorable night, he had no idea what awaited him and how his recklessness and pursuit of personal goals, contrary to the norms of morality and all principles, could end. And the whole story began not with Tony, and not even with his wife Julia, but with her father Harry. To a certain extent, he is involved in all that happened, because if it were not for his connections and fame, perhaps no marriage union and would not have been. Harry was born into an ordinary family, one could even say that the poor. His mother raised her son alone. There were times when there was no money even for necessary purchases, but it was such restrictions and raised a responsible and hardworking man from the boy, who does the work 100% and always brings the work to the end. Already at the age of 15, Harry began to look for his first part-time job. Unfortunately, there were not many options, and therefore had to agree to those options that were found. But by 18, he realized that working for someone else is not the best option, and therefore it is worth paying the most attention and zeal to the issues of training and development in their own direction. To develop a strategy for the development of their own business was not as difficult as it might seem at first glance, but to earn money to realize all this is much more difficult. The young man was not given a loan due to the lack of a permanent job and a fixed salary, and therefore the only option was to save money on his own and finalize the business plan in such a way that you can get the maximum quality with minimal investment. As a result, it took almost 10 years to launch his own business, and it was only at the age of 27 that Harry was able to achieve a great result and started to get some profitability. He developed in the direction of service and repair of equipment, including household and electronic. One of the most difficult tasks turned out to be finding excellent specialists who would be willing to work for the first time for not the highest pay on the labor market. The man offered career opportunities and very attractive, with a corresponding increase in salary during the year. Of course, this prospect did not appeal to everyone, but there were those people who decided to support the young entrepreneur and work for him. In Harry's life of great importance was his girlfriend Julia, with whom they knew since high school. She always supported the guy and even helped him with money at times, although she herself did not work at the best position. The girl supported him in all his endeavors, always stayed by his side, despite all the difficulties, and never gave reason to doubt her loyalty or determination to go with Harry to the end. Largely thanks to her help and support, he did not put his hands down and was able to achieve the heights to which he had been striving for so long. Love has survived the hardest times, and therefore the man was fully confident in his feelings and intentions, as well as in the fact that Julia loves him for nothing, not for money and certainly not for what he is a romantic, because Harry could disappear all day at work. She just loved him for what he was. And that is why immediately after achieving the first successes in the chosen direction of business, the man decided to make a marriage proposal, the answer to which was positive. The wedding was played 6 months later. It was small, but elegant and memorable. All the nearest and dearest people were present, who were sincerely happy for the couple. Soon the business went uphill. It began to receive a huge number of orders, such that there was not only an opportunity to increase wages to employees, as promised Harry, but also to expand the staff. He allocated a couple of dozen more vacancies. Every year, the company became more successful and more famous. In 2.5 years after the wedding, when the financial situation of the couple has already become more or less stable, disappeared constant financial difficulties and other tensions that did not give the opportunity to fully relax and enjoy life. Julia found out that she was pregnant. She was extremely happy with this outcome of events because she and her husband wanted a child from the day of the wedding. but for some reason for such a long time to get pregnant and did not work. And here, finally, 2 happy stripes on the next test, from which the couple did not expect anything. The future parents almost immediately began to prepare for the arrival of the baby. It was decided to buy not just an apartment, but a full-fledged country house, where it would be possible to enjoy family happiness to the fullest. In addition, fresh air will be much more useful for the child than city air. There will be no need to constantly look for quiet places for walks, because there will be its own huge territory, where you can feel as calm and secluded as possible. It was not possible to buy a house on their own savings, and therefore the couple took out a mortgage loan agreement, which, by the way, was repaid in just a couple of years. In the house began a rapid repair, especially the preparation of everything for the future baby. Not only the design of the room was made, but also purchased numerous elements of furniture and devices for the care of the child in its full development, as well as for the health and convenience of the future mother. The territory of the house, a place for joint games in the fresh air, was improved. A lot of attention was paid to the issue of safety, because in a country house to live is not as quiet as in an ordinary city apartment. In any case, Harry was definitely convinced of this, and there was no possibility of changing his position. Harry was in charge of all matters, and Julia had plenty of time to rest and keep herself in good health. This was of great importance because the prolonged absence of pregnancy could talk about the increased risk of an unfavorable outcome. That is why the woman was extremely anxious about her own health and the health of the future baby. Soon the couple learned that they would have a daughter. Disagreements about the name were quite a lot, but in the end the couple came to the decision to call her Katie. It's a beautiful name. And finally, the day of delivery approached. Julia beforehand put in the hospital for preservation because the child was quite large, and therefore there was a possibility that it will have to do a caesarean section. But everything went well and without surgical intervention, and therefore soon the young mother and her daughter were discharged home. They were welcomed by friends and relatives, and of course, the joyful new father, who could not find a place while this favorite woman was not at home. "Darling, how much I missed you." The man pressed his wife, who looked very tired and exhausted. "I promise you that now everything will be much easier. I will help you in everything if you want. We will hire a nanny who will help you in all matters with the baby, so that it will be easier for you, at least at first." The man hugged his wife harder, after which he kissed her on the top of her head and went to the car where his little daughter was sleeping in the car cradle. He gently leaned over to her to get a better look at every detail of her appearance. Then he said faintly, "You will have the happiest life, my little one. I will do everything I can to make sure that no one hurts you and that you are happy day in and day out. We will be the best parents for you, you'll see, baby." The man gently kissed his daughter on the forehead, from which she shivered, stretched, and opened her eyes. A smile appeared on the little girl's face, as if she felt that Daddy was telling the truth and would always be there for her. Thus began the happy parental life of the couple. First time Julia used the services of a nanny, she helped her to understand the peculiarities of motherhood and gave her the opportunity to rest after childbirth. But already from 3 months, the woman fully herself coped with all the duties of motherhood, refused to receive help from the outside. She liked to spend time with her baby, who every month pleased with her successes in development and improvement of new skills. The baby pleased her parents with her excellent health and calm character. She behaved calmly in almost any environment, rarely cried, even during the period when the baby was teething. She could easily be left with grandparents. With Julia's friend, she did not cry and played cheerfully with new people, allowing parents to spend time together without anxiety and worries. Of course, at times, the girl did not sleep well and was sick, especially after vaccinations. But these are trifles in the general mass of positive moments and impressions. Katie grew up, successfully graduated from kindergarten, and after it in private school. Yes, it was decided to give the little girl to a private school so that she had more opportunities for self-realization in the future. In addition, the parents were sure that it is in a private school their daughter will be treated in the best way, will give her a full baggage of knowledge and help her to determine the direction in life. Already by the age of 14, it became clear that the most interesting direction for Katie is directly related to the work of her father. She liked the direction of management, She showed interest and developed strategies to increase staff productivity, which her father, from time to time, allowed her to try on his employees. Everyone was understanding and there were no problems in the company. The girl graduated with honors. She followed in her father's footsteps and therefore was distinguished by diligence in solving the variety of issues that had to do with the organization of management and increasing the productivity of work. Some of the schemes that the girl proposed were indeed very effective, and therefore they were used in her father's organization. Kathy made every effort to earn his trust and get an opportunity to work in the organization in one of the managerial positions. However, Harry didn't want his daughter to get everything so easily. He was well aware of the time and effort it took to achieve something in this life, and he wanted Katie to realize that too. "Listen, sweetheart," Harry started talking over dinner when his daughter started talking again about her wanting to join his company after the 11th grade. "You have to have a college degree to be in a management position. You can't just come into a company and claim to be able to get a high position right away. You have to earn not only my trust, but also the trust of all the employees so that they are happy to work under you. If you don't put enough time and effort into your education, it's very likely that you won't have the best reputation. And as my daughter, you are subject to higher standards that you must meet in order to set an example for the rest of us. So in order to get a job at your company, I have to get a college degree. Can I study and work at the same time, for example, go to a correspondence course? I am sure that I will do well, and therefore you cannot worry about my academic performance. But I don't want to spend another 4 years on higher education without any practice at all. It's a pointless waste of time. Let's compromise. I'll go to university, and you let me work in the company, at least part-time, so that I get experience." "Young lady," it was heard in his voice that Harry was not particularly happy about this arrangement. "The option of working until I get my education does not suit me. You can propose your projects and visit the company during your studies, but I can't give you a full-time job. After you fully graduate and bring me your diploma, we will talk about your placement in the company. In the meantime, your job is to study diligently and get the theory, without which practice cannot be successful. Remember that any great things are done only by people who have spent a lot of time on education. Haste in managing people is simply unacceptable. You must realize exactly that your actions will affect the lives of others, and you will be held accountable for it all." I think this is the end of the topic, so I suggest we continue the dinner in a pleasant silence. Julia never interfered with her daughter's and her husband's conversations. She realized that both of them were right to a certain extent, so she decided to be neutral and not to support anyone. There was complete silence at the table after Harry had spoken. Katie did not try to prove anything else and try to change her father's mind. She knew that this would not only not bring positive results, but could also cause a small scuffle, which in any case would not end in her favor. The only option would be to get an education, as the man said, and only after that try to get a very decent position in his company again. In 20 years, the company has achieved simply incredible success in its direction. It had branches all over the country and a very positive reputation. The staff of employees exceeded a couple thousand people, and therefore the profitability was also very high. Harry adopted the position of development and investment, and therefore most of the money was invested in the construction of new branches and promotion in new communities. There was often a lot of competition, so it took a few years to develop the business and earn the trust of potential customers. Responsibility in the company was indeed at a high level, especially in the management segment. We had to constantly monitor employee quality and attendance, track absenteeism, performance metrics, and schedule accordingly to keep the company's performance high. This is critical not only to keep the flow of clients going, but also to maintain excellent relationships with regular clients who are contacted for very long-term relationships on an ongoing basis. As a result, Katie was very successful in all her entrance exams and applied to university to study human resource management and corporate productivity. It was going to be 4 long years of study, which seemed just endless for Katie. However, soon the girl realized that studying at the university was not the worst idea, because it was there that she met a man who won her heart from the first minutes. As a result, the study went to the second plan, and the first was Tony, the most popular guy of the university, who was only a year older than her. He studied economics and played in the local soccer team, had an attractive pumped-up body and incredible charisma. Of course, all this could not help but attract attention from the outside, and therefore he was chased by crowds of girls. Tony lived in a family of average income. His parents were teachers in the gymnasium, and therefore, in general, the welfare of the family was decent. But the guy could not afford any luxury. He looked great at the same time, competently combined colors and shades in his closet, and therefore even the simplest elements of clothing as a result turned into a stylish image, which immediately made it clear that the guy knows about fashion. In the soccer team he played from the very first day of school, it was evident that he followed the form and therefore actively engaged in sports. It was even said that after all the classes he goes to some closed sections, but the guy himself never confirmed it. Notice Kathy Tony just during a soccer match, which was to go to all streams without exception to support the university team. In general, the guy looked at a lot of girls, whispered, and even photographed, and therefore not to notice him was extremely difficult. Katie did not show much interest in the guy at first, because she realized that she did not need such high competition, and she was not ready to humiliate herself like all the other girls, just for the attention of a guy. As a result, the only decision she made was to forget about everything and wait for the denouement. So, if this guy is her destiny, then life will bring them together sooner or later. And if not, then why does she need him? Relationships for fun, she can find and so without much trouble, because the girl she is prominent and very beautiful. Soon after the soccer match, there was a private party among the coolest students of the university. Of course, Katie was invited, not only because everyone knew about the activities of her family, but also because of the bright and memorable appearance and active lifestyle. The girl took part in literally all possible contests and performances, and in some areas had very impressive successes. Needless to say, she did it only for the sake of having fun at school. It seemed to her that a simple study not for a managerial position, which she already knew everything about, and with a lot of unnecessary disciplines in the first year is just killing her boring red tape, and therefore she tried to have fun in any possible way. It was important for Katie to find something to do that would not make her parents call her and tell her that she was not serious about her studies, but rather praise her. As a result, she decided to sign up for all the competitions that were held in the higher education institution, to sign up for choreography and gymnastics, to go to cheerleaders, and even try herself in the direction of vocals. Katie managed to skip almost half of all classes at the university with impunity, with no negative consequences. Some directions she even liked. She enjoyed choreography and various competitions that were held in this direction. She studied very hard, just as in all other directions, showing herself only from the best side, so that the teachers of additional classes independently decided to take her off from these or those pairs for additional classes or preparation for the next important performance. The party promised to be great, and therefore the girl was preparing for it especially carefully. Immediately after she got home at the end of the pairs, she went to get ready. Katie knew that at the party there would be a large number of great guys who, like her, were active and motivated during their studies at the university. Perhaps it is there she will meet someone with whom she will want to spend time or even build a relationship. And that is why it is necessary to look the best. It should be noted that Katie was not very eager to build a serious relationship. Of course, the example of her parents is something inspiring and makes you believe in love, but she realized that this is the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. As a result, she was rather cold towards numerous suitors, not letting anyone get too close to hurting her. She believed that if fate decides that this or that guy is her soulmate, with whom she should spend her life, she will definitely feel it. Until that happened, she just had fun, constantly changing guys and not showing real feelings for any of them. The image of the girl for the party was just incredible. She wore a short red dress, which perfectly emphasized her figure, styled her hair, and made an expressive and attractive makeup to definitely be in the center of attention. All this was complemented by red high stilettos, which added not only femininity, but also a note of fatal beauty, which was visible from afar. The girl liked to dress brightly and through the image to declare herself, and therefore at the moment when she came down from her room to say goodbye to her parents and go to the party, they were not even surprised by another bright and provocative outfit. The only thing her father said in parting was, "Although roses are very beautiful, have a lot of thorns and look aggressive. They are very delicate and fragile. It's easy to break them, and you especially want to do it after a couple of pricks you've gotten, and so be careful. There are a lot of lovers of flowers, but those who appreciate them are few. Her father always had something to say every time Katie was going to a party or even just going out with her friends, some of whom she had even introduced to her family. It was obvious that he was very worried about his daughter and didn't want her to be hurt by anyone. But at the same time, he did not interfere openly in her life. Everything is learned by one's own mistakes, and other people's orders and instructions will not lead to anything good. As a result, he kept a certain neutrality and just said some admonitions, as if warning his girl about the danger. But she only smiled each time, answering nothing. Soon Katie reached the address of the party. It was a country house, huge and swanky. It was lit up with hundreds of lights from garlands. Loud music could be heard in the neighborhood. It was clear that this was the place where the party was being held. At the entrance to the grounds stood a guard who looked even intimidating in some ways. He clarified the girl's name, then checked her name in the lists, and only after that he let her into the territory. It was obvious that no one was allowed into the territory, and therefore the party really promised to be grandiose. There was a huge number of people, despite the fact that the girl arrived a little before the set time. Here gathered not only the students of the first year, as she thought, but all the students of the university who made progress in one direction or another, positively showed themselves among other students, had an excellent reputation, or simply were favorites of many. Predominantly, everyone was standing in small groups, chatting among themselves, laughing and having fun. But there were those who, like Katie, were alone, strolling around the grounds and just looking around. Apparently, parties are held here quite often, and so the atmosphere is unforgettable. A huge amount of party paraphernalia, alcohol, snacks, coolly decorated pool and recreation area in a small square behind the house. Everything disposes to itself and allowed to relax completely. The girl decided to do just that, took the can with a cocktail, checked that it was closed, and only then began to drink it and calmly walk around the territory. There were very few people she knew. Predominantly, there were very mature guys who were apparently in their senior year of high school. Several times they approached her to get acquainted, but after her cold and indifferent answers, they decided to go on having fun. And then, among the huge number of people, she saw Tony, and for some reason she didn't understand, she felt her heart beat a little faster. She hadn't felt such a sensation for a long time, and she was surprised at her body's reaction. She didn't quite know what to do, so she just froze and looked in his direction. The guy sensed this and turned exactly in the direction where Katie was standing. He raised his hand and waved at her, and she waved back. After standing in one place for a few more seconds, the girl realized it was time to stop looking at the guy and go the other way. She didn't quite understand what made her act this way, because she had been very cold to guys before and mostly didn't even greet them, let alone stand there and just stare at a guy for a few minutes, even after he'd obviously noticed. Her pride just wouldn't let her do that, and it was like she'd forgotten what it was and couldn't help herself until she looked at a guy. This situation threw her off balance. The girl was a little confused and even upset that she had not shown herself in the best light, or rather, in an unusual light for her. She never wanted to seem like the kind of girl who was ready to humiliate herself and run after a guy just to get his attention. And she knew perfectly well that she would never do that, even if she fell in love. A guy should pursue her, not the other way around. Who was that pretty girl who was looking at us? Tony asked one of his friends after Kathy was out of sight. I haven't noticed her at our parties before. Is she new? Yeah. Freshman, one of the guys said, kind of an activist, involved in everything and even doing well. And she's studying well. And apparently, she looks great too. I wonder how she does it all, considering the number of her clubs. I don't know, Tony replied, but she sure looks great. So I think I'll hook up with her. We'll hook up a couple times and then we'll go our separate ways until I find a better one. Especially, it doesn't look like she's from a well-to-do family. Her dress is very ordinary, as well as her shoes. She didn't come in her own car. Otherwise, the guard would have reported that another parking space was occupied. And you know, guys, I'm only attracted to rich people. The guy laughed and pushed one of his comrades in the shoulder. Everyone around him laughed back. It was the plain truth. Tony wasn't looking for a girl for love. He was making every effort to find the perfect match by calculation. Despite the fact that the guy was not from a poor family and his parents had earned everything they had with honest labor, he didn't want to go down the same path. He realized that you can get a huge amount of money much easier just by successfully playing a wedding, after which you cannot work and just enjoy a carefree and idle life. This position seemed to him the most successful, and therefore he strictly adhered to this plan to find a rich bride. Of course, he never told anyone but his closest friends about it, unless he was just jokingly saying it in company to make everyone laugh. No one could not think that such a purposeful and determined guy looking for a girl who will provide for him, and not the other way around. Everyone was sure that he would be a great husband, and after graduation, he would be able to find a great job. However, no one assumed he wasn't going to work at all. "That's where you're wrong, my friend," answered the other guy, who looked distant but was listening attentively to the whole conversation. "She is exactly from the rich. Her parents own a big company that has been opening branches all over the country in recent years. I don't know why she doesn't show it off. Rich girls usually like to do that. But I'm pretty sure her father is the one who runs that company. My parents have a contract for regular services, and I've even seen her come in a couple times with her employees to monitor the success of the work and implement new options to make the company more productive. So I suggest you take a closer look at this gal." At this point, Tony was seriously considering what to do with this girl. Outwardly, she is extremely attractive, but at the same time looks like arrogant and unapproachable, and therefore definitely have to try to get a favor from her. But such difficulties guy definitely did not frighten in achieving his main goal of a successful wedding. It was necessary to think through a plan that can bring very attractive results in its implementation. And for this purpose, it is necessary to learn more about the hobbies of the girl and her family, about where she goes, what she likes, and so on. The main thing, as Tony believed, do not hurry and develop the relationship gradually so that no one suspected anything. Otherwise, the plan could simply be a failure. Kathy was strolling leisurely through the country house when she saw a very attractive girl sitting by the pool all alone. It was obvious that she was upset about something, but she wasn't crying, just staring at the water and thinking about something. She looked just like Katie in difficult and confusing situations, and so the decision was made to go over and talk to the stranger. Sometimes it is talking to a stranger that proves to be the most necessary and the most helpful, because you can't tell your loved ones everything, and not always. "Hi, beautiful." Katie came close enough to the girl so that she could hear her perfectly well, but could leave in case she was uncomfortable with her presence for some reason. "Why are you sitting here so dressed up and sexy all alone?" The girl looked at Katie appraisingly, then sighed heavily and turned her gaze back to the water. The silence continued for a couple of minutes, after which the stranger decided to answer the question. "I broke up with my boyfriend today, because of which I had a big fight with my parents a couple months ago, and now I'm all alone. Ask for forgiveness from no one. I do not want to apologize and say that they were right when they said that he is a scoundrel. I also do not want. I don't know what to do in this situation. My dad said that as long as I'm dating this guy, I don't have parents anymore. But basically, I don't communicate with them, but I don't communicate with my parents either because they don't know about it." The girl took a deep breath and continued to look at the water. "It's not a pleasant situation," Katie said, "but if you think about it, you can always find a better solution. So if you don't want to talk about the breakup, let someone else tell your parents, and then you won't be humiliated, and your parents will know about everything and will communicate with you normally again." Katie sat down next to the stranger and put her feet in the water of the pool. The water was surprisingly warm, even though it was already mid-autumn. "Yes, your plan looks very attractive," she replied, "but the problem is that there's no one to tell my parents that we're splitting up. I only moved here a couple weeks ago and transferred to a new university, so I haven't made any friends. I spent all my free time with my boyfriend, who turned out to be a horrible person and dumped me a few days before my birthday. And now I'm sitting on some weird hangout and expressing my discontent to a strange girl who tries to solve all my problems. How ironic." Katie was amused by the stranger's statement. She herself is such a completely self-reliant, strong, and independent person who doesn't want to open up to other people and show any emotion whatsoever. If it were possible, she would never tell anyone about her problems at all. But constantly storing up all this dissatisfaction and anxiety in herself is not the best option. And therefore, she still decided to keep up with the girl. Well then, let's fix your situation and make new friends. My name is Katie. I'm studying at the same university as you, in the first year of management and productivity or something like that. The girl began a long story about herself. Katie gave all the basic details about her life, shared some misunderstandings with her parents, and talked about her favorite places. The story was not long, but very informative, and therefore it was already possible to form a certain picture about the person. Of course, many moments were omitted because it is impossible to tell the whole life in just a few minutes, and there was no need to tell all the small details. Well, Katie finished her story. Now it's your turn to tell about your life and complain about the injustice of life. She smiled, which was definitely disposed to herself even more than the story. My name is Ariana, the girl answered. A few months ago, I moved to this city with my family so that my father could continue his service and I could study in a decent higher institution. The girl also shared a few details about her childhood, even mentioning her first love. She explained the difficulties of communicating with her parents, told me about her former young man and her chosen direction of study. She talked for quite a long time, adding more and more details to her story. Kathy didn't interrupt her, but just listened attentively, asking clarifying questions in some places. The girls spent the whole evening together, chatting heart to heart. After getting acquainted, they realized that they had quite a lot of common topics and even had some similar problems in life. That it is interesting for them to spend time together and share funny stories from life, which at times make not just smile, but laugh heartily. The evening flew by, and when Katie and Ariana started to look around, they realized that almost everyone had already left, so it was time for them to go home. They agreed to meet at the university the next day to discuss how to solve Ariana's problem with her parents and how to tell them that she was no longer seeing her ex-boyfriend. By morning, Katie had a plan ready on how to tell Ariana's parents about her breakup with her former young man. As it seemed to the girl, it was excellent and therefore should work in the best possible way. It remained only to clarify all the small points, after which it will be possible to proceed to its realization. The girls met at the entrance to the university as agreed, and Katie went straight to the plan. Would you have no problem if a friend you met at the university came to visit you for a couple of hours? Asked Katie before voicing her future plan. I think my mother won't mind, and my father is at work anyway. He doesn't care about my friends, Ariana replied, then shrugged and turned towards her new acquaintance. Why? Do you want to visit? Well, how can I put it? We need me to come to your place, and while you're off somewhere, like picking up the delivery guy for our pizza, I'll have a nice chat with your mother and casually mention that you're single now. Eventually she'll know you're single now. Be sure to tell your father, and you won't have to do anything for it. Of course, then there will almost certainly be questions about why you didn't tell her yourself, and blah 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 blah. But you'll figure it out on your own, right? Katie turned toward her friend, who stood at a complete loss, and just stared at her after the plan was announced. That sounds like a great plan. I'll introduce you as my best friend who I've been in touch with since I moved in, and then it's just a matter of taking it from there. I just have to play my parts perfectly, and I don't have to worry about getting a great result for my problem. I'm not sure if my mother will ask me anything about why I didn't tell her about the breakup. She's used to me never telling them anything, but the situation should definitely get better. Maybe we can even start communicating. The constant silence in the house is really stressing me out. Ariana threw herself at the neck of her new friend, who seemed to be able to solve all of her problems quickly and easily. We'll just have to wait for the denouement and see the outcome of the plan. Even if it didn't work out, at least it would be possible to spend the evening not in complete silence, but over a fun chat with Katie, who seemed to have an endless supply of stories and incredible accounts of her life. Katie felt that she had already accomplished what she had set out to do, and so she looked forward to the evening without any worries. But she did not know that her plan was not the only one, and Tony was already thinking about how to win the girl's heart and then successfully marry her. After university, the girls went straight to Ariana's house. Katie warned her parents that she would go to her new friend to do management, and therefore there should be no problems. The most important thing is to be able to make a conversation with the mother of the new friend, and then say about the breakup as if she did not know that the relationship between mother and daughter is not the best. And so they reached and headed for the entrance. It was obvious that Ariana was worried and looked very tense, but it was even to her advantage because it would be easier to find a topic to start a conversation with her mother. The woman met the girls at the entrance. She was watering the flowers that were beautifully arranged in cactus throughout the grounds. Ariana simply walked through the house and Katie stopped to say hello. "Good afternoon, I'm Kathy, your daughter's best friend in the new place," she pronounced, expecting any response to the introduction. "Nice to meet you," the woman replied and continued watering the flowers. She only glanced at the girl, which clearly indicated her disinterest and a certain detachment from everything around her. Of course, Katie didn't like this, but she decided to remain proud and simply followed Ariana into the house. The situation was a little more complicated than she had thought, but it didn't make her any less confident in her own abilities. In fact, she was even more determined to tell the woman the important news about her daughter. Soon a message came through that a courier was approaching his destination, so she needed to go out and meet him. Ariana headed for the exit and Katie followed her to see where her mother was after all. The woman was sitting in the courtyard, in a chair, and enjoying some sort of drink. Katie reached exactly before her, then stopped, escorting Ariana following her to the wicket gate while she took her order. "My daughter is no longer able to meet the courier herself," the woman said suddenly. "Does she need an escort everywhere now?" She didn't look in Katie's direction, but was completely detached from everything that was happening. If there had been someone else in the immediate vicinity, it would have been impossible to make out who the woman was talking to. No, just today, because of her depressed mood over her breakup with Ron. Even though she'd expected this from him, and had even considered dumping this kid who didn't inspire any hope, she was still a little shaken after the breakup. She was particularly distracted and upset in her classes today, so I decided to support her in some way and spend the evening together. I think she'll be much better off that way. The woman didn't say anything to Katie, but it was obvious that she was deep in thought, so deep in her thoughts that it was impossible to tell what was on her mind. Almost certainly she was thinking about what her daughter's friend had said, considering what to do next. After a few seconds, Ariana walked over to Katie and pulled her into the house, saying nothing to her mother. "So, how did it go?" the girl asked impatiently, walking only a few steps away from the place where her fate had just been decided. She knew her mother, so she doubted the success of the plan. "Everything went fine," Katie replied. "I told her about the breakup. She didn't say anything back, but she definitely heard everything I told her. I think things are going to be great from here on out," she smiled. The girls spent the next few hours eating pizza, talking and sharing stories from their lives. It seemed like they had known each other all their lives, and so the time flew by. But it was time to leave, to get ready for their classes, and Ariana had to find out if today's plan had yielded any results, or if it hadn't been worth the time and effort. The moment Katie had practically reached her house, a text message arrived on her phone. "Hi, the prettiest girl of my party." She didn't know who exactly was in charge of decorating and hosting the event she had attended not too long ago, and so she made the decision not to reply anything to it. A few minutes later, a second message arrived. "You were looking at me when I was standing with my friends. I waved at you and you waved back. I didn't realize you'd fall into my heart like that after a fleeting encounter that night." And that's when she realized it. The same guy at the sight of whom she had felt strange feelings had found her number somewhere and decided to write. And then the girl believed that it was her destiny and that she should definitely answer the messages. She wrote briefly and succinctly, "Hello, stranger." Messages are not the best way to get to know a person, because we all hide behind masks. If you want to get to know someone, come up in person and strike up a conversation. After sending it, she waited a few more minutes for a reply, and when she realized there wasn't going to be one, she simply headed home. It wasn't quite clear whether her determination had lured him in or pushed him away. It wouldn't be clear until the next day. If a guy comes to meet her, it means he shares the girl's point of view and still wants to meet her, and if not, it means that she sees signs of fate where there are none, and therefore that handsome guy from the party is not meant for her. Tony was extremely happy with this turn of events. He didn't want to hurry and approach the girl with extreme caution, but she took the initiative and said that he should meet her in person. So she still liked him, and therefore it becomes much easier to realize his plan. The main thing is to do everything carefully and to feel the ground, so that God forbid, not to lose the opportunity to build a relationship with her. And while Katie thought about the fact that fate decided to give her such a gift for her suffering at school, which she was not particularly interested in, Tony thought about how to quickly marry the girl and get a part of her parents' business, and in such a way that there was no possibility for her family in the future, after the divorce, to return it to themselves. Yet, he wasn't going to be married for life. He just wanted a promising passive income that he could live on for the rest of his life without denying himself any pleasures. The next morning, Katie woke up with the feeling that something significant was going to happen today, something that would change her life. Practically no one approached her for the rest of the day, despite the fact that she had both gone to soccer team practice and participated in a general study session that went in the direction of athletics. And at that moment, when she had already decided that no gifts from fate should be expected, Tony approached her in the dining room, who smiled and said, "Well, hello, pretty girl, with whom you need to communicate only in person." He smiled to please the girl to himself, and he succeeded. "Hello, party boy who can't stop thinking about me," she smiled back, showing that she was interested in chatting. "Why is such a beautiful girl alone all the time? I've never seen a guy near you, and I don't see a ring on your finger, so you're not married. How did you manage to stay alone for so long?" The girl grinned, and a little embarrassed after that. "I was just waiting for the one who would make me feel great, and who would love me to my heart's content and think about me nights." She moved a little closer to the guy, but now everyone is so mercantile and insecure, and also unfaithful, and that's what I can't stand in a relationship. I certainly don't need a male dog. Of course, Tony was of a completely different opinion. He was sure that you can have many relationships at once, change partners at the first desire. Because in this life, there are so many beautiful girls and want to try all kinds of pleasure. But of course, he couldn't say that to the girl he was going to marry in the future, even if it was by calculation. "You're quite right, doll. Cheating is a terrible thing. I don't approve of it myself. And so I'm looking for the one with whom I'll live my whole life. For better or for worse, you know?" The boy winked and smiled again. "I do. I think we are very much alike in this point, because I'm looking for one for life too. But how hard it is to find such a person. Or maybe you should just look around and you will see that there is already such a person with whom you can live a long and happy life. You just have to look a little more closely at those who are around." Of course, the guy was alluding to himself, and Kathy understood it perfectly well. In general, she liked the young man. He had a good disposition and looked very attractive and manly. His words also liked the girl. It seemed to her that he said it from the heart. Acting lessons, which attended the guy, certainly did not pass without a trace. The couple talked about nothing for a few more minutes, after which the guy invited the girl for a first date to a restaurant near the university. It was decided to go right after couples, so as not to postpone the meeting. Katie liked this arrangement because confidence and determination is one of those qualities in a man, which she appreciated very much. She texted her mother that she would be a little late after the guys, and then went on a date with the guy she thought was just perfect. The couple talked about nothing for a few more minutes, after which the guy asked the girl out on a first date to a restaurant near the university. It was decided to go right after the couples, so as not to postpone the meeting. Katie liked this arrangement because confidence and determination is one of those qualities in a man, which she appreciated very much. She texted her mother to tell her that she would be a little late after the guys, and then she went on a date with a guy she thought was perfect. The date went beautifully. The couple laughed and discussed fun times in their lives. Tony could support any topic of conversation, and therefore it was quite pleasant to talk to him. He constantly made Kathy laugh, told jokes, and even acted a little silly at times, but the girl liked it. She felt great in his company and therefore for herself decided unequivocally that this is the man whom fate has given her, and it is him she should not miss. Tony did everything possible to please the girl and maximize her disposition. On a date, he did what he would never do with a normal girl. He behaved stupidly in public, which made him feel a lot of discomfort and even some irritation, but the achievement of the goal was in the first place. Kathy had to like him and make her fall in love with him, and he was quite successful at it. After the date was over, as soon as Katie got home, her mom called her in for a serious talk. It turned out that her friend had passed by the cafe where Katie had spent time with Tony, and so Julia wanted to discuss extremely important matters with her daughter. Of course, she didn't want to pry into her personal life, and she didn't want to influence the decision in any way, but she needed to warn her girl. "Honey," the mother began as Katie sat down next to her, "I know you have a young man and that you would have told me about him when the time came, but I really need to talk to you." She waited for her daughter's reaction, wondering what she should say next so that she would be understood correctly. "Mom, I know everything, that I need to finish my studies, that I only need to think about getting an education, getting a job with my father's company, and so on. I realize that I shouldn't put my career on hold because of a relationship, and that not every guy turns out to be a good guy. I remember all the conversations we've had in the past, so you don't have to worry. Can I go to my room now?" "No, sweetie, that's not what I wanted to tell you. Yes, you're right, your studies come first, but there's always room for love. Otherwise, how could your father and I be together? We both studied and we both worked, but we found time to be together. Our love survived all the trials, and that's how we knew it was sincere. So we decided to walk hand in hand for the rest of our lives." The woman smiled. "Then what did you want to talk about?" Katie asked her mother. "About how not all guys have the right goals. Some really want to build a family and live their whole life with one person, while others have purely selfish motives. Our family has a very famous company, and therefore a large number of not-so-nice people can appear around you. They will all have their own agendas, and they will all be trying to profit from your company or even your relationship, and you have to be ready for that." "Mom," Katie interrupted her, "I know all that too. My father lectured me about it the last time I brought home not even a boyfriend, just a friend of mine. I'll try to be careful what I choose, okay? But we can't know what kind of person we're going to get in our lives, good or not so good. It wouldn't be fun to live. And so the only thing I can promise you is that I will try not to make a mistake, but I can't guarantee that I won't. Let's just see what happens, and then we'll deal with things as they come. I think that's the most logical option for our situation. Now I'm off to my room to get ready for tomorrow's pairings." Katie didn't wait for a reply and just headed to her room. "Okay, sweetie," whispered Julia, being alone in the living room. Kathy and Tony's relationship was progressing quite rapidly. The couple spent almost every day together. They went to caves and restaurants, sat together in the school canteen. He walked her home, and after a couple of weeks began to meet her in front of couples. At the same time, Katie managed to devote quite a lot of time to her new friend Ariana, with whom they had sleepovers and went to local bars together, went to exhibitions, and even chose a new boyfriend for her. After Katie opened up about her relationship with Tony, Ariana was a little wary, as he had previously tried to build a relationship with her as well. "When I first came here," Ariana told her new girlfriend, "he started paying attention to me right away. It was obvious to everyone, but I was in a relationship with Ron at the time, and of course I didn't even think about reciprocating. To be honest, after the breakup, I had thoughts of calling Tony and asking him to meet me, to sleep with him just for the sake of appearances, because so many girls said that he was very cool in this case. But I never called him, and then I met you, and I had no desire to meet him. And now we can forget about the cool night," she sighed playfully, and then laughed when Katie shoved her in the shoulder. "Come on. I was just kidding about how formidable we are." The girls laughed. Of course, Katie knew her friend wasn't serious, but the thought of Tony changing girls like a glove wasn't exactly pleasant either. Of course, he told her that many of them were sticking to him and did not give a pass. With others, he tried to build a relationship, but he realized that they were too mercantile and unfaithful, and the third and even just made up all these stories about his adventures. In general, the guy just tried to find the one, and around him grew rumors and strange stories that had nothing to do with his life. Of course, all this was not true, but Katie believed in all the stories of her young man, maybe because he was a great storyteller and added more emotional details that made the monologues more convincing, or maybe just because the girl wanted everything Tony said to be true. Soon the guy started to insist on meeting her parents. "Go on, honey," he said. "If we plan to develop a long and serious relationship, we have to meet the parents." Tony realized that getting to know Kathy's parents would take their relationship to the next level, and therefore it would be very likely that the relationship could also be taken to marriage without much trouble. The most important thing is to please the parents and not to cause any fear in them, and also to prove himself as a reliable and hardworking person who can be trusted and part of the business if necessary, which was the whole calculation. Well, let's first get acquainted with your parents," suggested Katie during another such conversation. "Since you want us to get closer, let you introduce me to your mom and dad. Let them get to know me better, and if all goes well, I will definitely introduce you to my parents." The boy was obviously not ready for such a turn of events. He wanted to get acquainted with Katie's parents to start to dispose them to himself, to earn their trust, and to get the opportunity to realize his plan. But he didn't plan to introduce his parents to his potential bride so early. But there was no choice. Until the moment of receiving everything necessary, had to agree to all the proposals and desires of Katie, and therefore had to go along and agree. It was decided to meet over dinner on the weekend so they could get to know each other and talk about everything in the world. Tony only had to tell his parents that in a couple of days they were to meet his girlfriend, with whom he was planning a very serious future. So when he got home, he went straight to the living room where his parents watched movies every night and started the conversation. "Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you," the boy began. "Something very important. You have to accept my decision because I'm not going to change it." "Speak, sweetie," said Tony's mother. "We are used to you doing things your own way, so we will hardly change your mind." The father and mother looked at their son, who looked worried and even anxious. "On Saturday, my girlfriend is coming over, whom I want you to meet. I've invited her to dinner, so we'll have to get ready for her. I want everything to go perfectly, and I want her to have a great impression of our family. It's very important to me, and therefore I ask you to take it with understanding." The guy was silent and waited for an answer from his parents. "We thought that constancy and stability is not for you. You brought a new girl every week, and you never introduced us to anyone." His father looked at his son questioningly. "We'd all change when we fall in love," the boy replied, and then shrugged his shoulders. "What do you say? Is it okay that I invited her this Saturday? We'll have time to get everything ready for her, right?" He looked at his mother. Of course we will, honey," the woman replied and smiled. "I'm so glad you finally found love. Maybe everything will be fine and we will live to see your wedding." The woman laughed sincerely, and then she looked at her husband. The man sat and looked at his son with some disbelief. But literally after a couple of minutes he also smiled, after which the mother and father began to discuss how best to organize a meeting with the son's girlfriend. Tony stood for a couple more minutes and then headed to his room without saying anything to his parents. He understood that most likely awkward moments could not be avoided, but since Katie was so eager to meet his parents, he would have to organize it all. It would be the only way to get a chance to meet her father, who owned a large company. And then it will be a small matter to earn his trust and favor and marry Kathy to get a very attractive wedding gift. The main thing is not to hurry too much, because if the girl does not notice anything for love, her parents will be especially attentive to the behavior of the guy and his actions. The next few days flew by unnoticed. Despite the fact that Tony was very worried about the upcoming meeting with his parents, everything went just fine. There were no problems or misunderstandings. The girl had a very successful conversation with both her mother and father, and they did not ask any unnecessary questions and did not say a word about their son's past adventures. In general, the meeting went just fine, and everyone was satisfied with the acquaintance. Now it was just a matter of getting acquainted with Katie's parents and starting to actively gain their trust in order to build a great relationship with them. Right after the meeting was over, Tony, walking the girl to her house, asked, "When do I expect to meet your parents now? I look forward to getting to know the people who raised such an angel." The guy kissed Kathy's hand and then looked at her with a hard stare. "I don't think it's worth rushing into an acquaintance. My father is a very specific person, and therefore he might not make the best impression on you. I think we should introduce you a little later, when he realizes that our relationship is serious enough." "Well, no, doll, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me. For that, to prove to your parents the seriousness of my intentions, you just need to meet them, and then they will realize that their daughter is in good hands and stop worrying about you. It seems to me that your father will be much more comfortable if he knows exactly where you are and who you're with, and then you won't have to spend half an hour every time explaining to him that I'm good." There were situations when Katie had to explain for a long time that her boyfriend had good intentions, that he wasn't trying to harm her in any way, and that he cared for her. On the one hand, the girl understood her father's worries and tried to react calmly to such situations, but on the other hand, she did not understand why he could not just trust her and calm down, because she had said hundreds of times that she was in good hands. As a result, sometimes it even became the cause of fights, and therefore Tony's words seemed very reasonable to her. "You know, you're right. I think you should really get to know each other, and then my father will realize what a wonderful person you are," she smiled. Of course, Tony wasn't so much worried about his father calling Katie and ruining her mood with it, but about the time he would have to spend on the relationship additionally if he didn't meet the girl's parents as early as possible. As a result, he gently but pressured her to still make a decision in favor of dating rather than postponing it. Luckily for the guy, the girl didn't suspect anything and scheduled the acquaintance for the following weekend. This time should have been enough to prepare for numerous questions from future relatives, especially since he already knew a lot about her family. Katie's parents had not taken the news of their acquaintance very well. Her father did not want to accept the fact that the girl had already called a strange guy to their house and promised him a meeting with both parents. He was extremely suspicious of all this, but there was no choice. Julia insisted that the meeting should be conducted normally, according to all the rules, so that they knew exactly with whom their daughter was communicating and understood his intentions, not to worry about where she was and with whom she was spending time, and so on. After some brief conversations, a positive decision was made regarding the meeting. Kathy texted Tony, "It worked out. They have agreed to meet you this weekend. We'll be waiting for you for dinner." After receiving the message, the guy's joy was unbounded. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. There were no problems or complications, so he could relax and just wait for the meeting. He was sure of his success. And so, finally, the day of the meeting came. The guy even put on a suit to make a good impression right from the doorstep. He was extremely courteous to Kathy that day, and it was obvious that despite all this confidence in his own abilities and charm, the guy was still worried. The girl had given him a couple of tips on how to behave with her parents, what not to talk about with her father, and what points to pay special attention to during dinner. Of course, she also warned him that her father might be a bit prejudiced, and therefore you should not take his words too seriously. But the boy was prepared for all that. He realized that it would not be easy to earn trust and get a good attitude. He would have to try. During dinner, Julia asked a minimum number of questions, and Mort listened to the dialogue of her daughter's boyfriend and her husband, who was interested in literally every moment of the guy's life. Harry learned not only about his family and future plans, but also about his past relationships, his professional skills, his intentions regarding Katie, and so on. Some of the questions were extremely tactless, but after every exclamation from Kathy, Tony calmly turned to her and replied that everything was fine and he could answer the question without much trouble. Throughout the dinner, the guy showed himself to be exceptionally positive. He was courteous not only to Kathy, but also to her mom, refused to drink alcohol because he planned to prepare for a project at the university after the dinner was over, and everything in that vein. In general, with all his efforts, he put himself in an extremely positive light to get approval for a relationship with their daughter. In the end, the dinner went as well as it could, and at the end of this event, he heard the cherished words from Harry, Katie's father. "Well, all in all, I see that you're not a bad guy," said the man, determined, "and you know what your goals and ambitions are. I think you'll make a great specialist in your field. Maybe there's even a place for you in my company in the future. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope that you will continue to be as good as you are and treat my daughter well." He shook Tony's hand. "Of course, I'm sure things will only get better from here on out," the guy replied. "It was a pleasure to meet you too." It is interesting to talk to someone who is a professional in his work and knows exactly what he wants from this life. And it was a pleasure to meet your lovely wife too. It is now clear who Kathy is so beautiful in. I look forward to meeting you again. All the best. After that, the guy kissed his beloved and headed for the exit. It was already late enough. and therefore it was decided to go for a walk together tomorrow and today to have a good rest, because soon the first session at the university began, which promised to be not the easiest. Katie had missed a lot of classes because of the constant competitions and trainings, and therefore she had to fill in the huge problems and knowledge that she had. Luckily, Ariana, who was very good at many subjects, was coming tomorrow morning and promised to help her friend. The next few weeks passed in constant studying and worry, numerous exams and credits, constant preparation, and a huge amount of training before the new year. All this exhausted the girl. Her only salvation was her friend and boyfriend, who always stayed close and found time every day to cheer her up and meet at least for a few minutes. And now all the exams are closed, all the reporting performances have been successfully passed, and now you can relax and prepare for the new year. Ever since she was a little girl, Katie had loved this particular holiday the most. It seemed to her to be the most magical of the year. Although she did not believe in Santa Claus, she was sure that it was on New Year's Eve that the real miracles happened. A grand party was planned. Not only students were invited to it, but also some teachers and even parents. Of course, Tony invited his girlfriend's parents to the party, with whom, by the way, he had a great relationship. He was in constant contact with the girl's father, complimented his mother every time he saw her. He appeared more and more often in guests, and the parents themselves invited him to dinners or just for tea, because his company was very pleasant and disposed to himself. Of course, Katie was pleased, because she was afraid that her boyfriend wouldn't get along with her parents. Tony often discussed work matters with Kathy's father. He asked a lot of questions and was interested in every detail, and at every opportunity he said that he always wanted to try himself as a co-manager who owns part of the company and helps in solving serious issues. That this is what he aspires to, and that is why he is studying hard in his field and additionally getting distance education in order to develop in all important directions. At the same time, he repeatedly mentioned that he has a very successful internship where he often receives positive characteristics. Harry encouraged such aspirations because he himself used to get several educations and work at the same time, and also looked for ways to pass all this practice in the right directions. He could see himself in the boy as a young man, but he couldn't figure out what it was, no matter how hard he tried. In the end, Harry decided that all his worries and distrust were just because he didn't want to let his daughter go into adulthood, that he is not ready to put her in the hands of a stranger, but at the same time there are no problems directly in Mitri. He has always shown himself exclusively from a positive side and did everything possible to please Katie. After several conversations, Harry and Julia came to the conclusion that their daughter has found a great guy, with whom, very likely, she will be happy in the future. Of course, it's impossible to say definitively whether this will be the case. Life will put everything in its place. Harry several times shared his worries and some distrust of their daughter's boyfriend when talking to his wife, but Julia saw nothing wrong in him, and so every time she managed to change her husband's mind and calm him down. But if she had listened to his words then, if she also did not trust the guy who seemed to her just perfect, perhaps the story would have turned out a little differently. And then New Year's Eve comes around. The party is incredible, exciting, and memorable. Everything is decorated in such a way that each person could not only feel in the most calm and pleasant atmosphere, but also felt the New Year's miracle, immersed in the atmosphere of a fairy tale. Tony tried hard to decorate the country house, which he often rented. Yes, all the events were held not at his home, but on neutral territory, which was the most convenient for him. Of course, the atmosphere was created for a reason. It should not be forgotten that the guy had a certain plan, which he continued to successfully follow. He didn't think about falling in love with Katie for real. He didn't even want to give the relationship a chance. The only ambition he had was to finish what he had started as soon as possible and get a cherished part of her father's business, with whom he had a very good relationship. The only problem that remained unsolved was the question of marriage, because Tony was almost certain that the most compelling reason to give him a piece of the business would be a wedding present. And so, after the chimes struck midnight, after the first congratulations were sounded and dozens of fireworks were sent into the sky, the guy got down on one knee and offered the girl to become his wife. There was no prepared speech, everything was simple and laconic, and Katie agreed. The decision to make a marriage proposal came into the head of the guy at the moment when he was thinking about how to do so as to minimize the likelihood of receiving a refusal. Still, the couple hadn't been dating that long, and there was a risk that the girl might refuse or ask to wait so they could get to know each other better, spend more time together, and so on. He remembered that Katie had always said that she believed in the miracle of New Year's Eve, and that it was the night when many people had the most important events in their lives happen and all their wishes come true. In addition, the atmosphere would be relaxing and disposed to joy. And yes, there would be a huge number of people around, in front of which it would be somewhat uncomfortable to refuse. As a result, the guy decided that a better option than New Year's Eve night will not be, and therefore, in addition to preparing the party, he took up the issue of finding the wedding ring. And it turned out to find it at the last moment. Received consent incredibly pleased the guy, because now he had only a couple of simple steps to achieve his cherished dream. It remained only to play his wedding ceremony and receive a gift. Of course, you still need to carefully approach the issue of the gift, preparing the girl to the fact that they need to have their own version of income for a normal life, which will allow them not to need anything. Preparations for the wedding began quite rapidly. Fortunately, Kathy herself wanted to hold the ceremony as soon as possible, and therefore Tony did not even have to persuade his future wife not to put off the preparation in a long box. Katie spent a lot of time on her studies and education, and had time to look through a huge number of questions about the preparation for the wedding ceremony. And with all this, she still had a huge amount of energy and strength to meet with friends and her future husband outside of the main events. Kathy's parents for the first few days were extremely wary of the guy's proposal, despite the fact that their relationship was very good. The main problem was the speed of the decision. They believe that the young people are too little acquainted, and therefore they need a little more time to get to know each other a little better, to learn about all the shortcomings of each and at least live together a little before making such a responsible decision. But of course, the young people did not listen to anyone and were sure that they made the right decision from all possible. In 2 months, the preparation for the wedding was almost completed, and there were questions about the gift to the young people on this day. You see, my love, began as a future husband, we will soon need to live alone, and therefore a great solution would be to get some opportunity to earn independently and provide for themselves without the help of parents. I just can't figure out how to do it yet. Yes, it would be great to live completely on our own and not depend on anyone, Katie replied, so we could do whatever we wanted. There was silence in the room for a few minutes, and then the girl said, I can talk to my father so that as a wedding present he can give us a part of his company, which would allow us to earn some income as a passive option. Then we could not have to worry about tuition, not have to drop out of school to work, and still have everything we need. Of course, it is not certain that he will agree, but we can try to realize such an idea, don't you think? Those were the words Tony wanted to hear from his future wife. However, in order not to cause apprehension, he still said, we can achieve everything and independently, we will work hard, and then can open some in their own business. But of course, if you get help from your parents, it will be much easier to start developing. But even if they refuse, then do not worry, honey. We will achieve everything on our own. Don't worry only. The guy drew the girl's hand to his and kissed it gently, slowly raising his gaze to her. To avoid dragging this whole process out, Katie made the decision to talk to her father the next day. The conversation was not the easiest, but it resulted in a positive answer. Her father agreed to give part of the company, but only on the condition that it would be recorded on his daughter. Only this arrangement suited him completely, because the man did not feel full trust. In general, Tony was happy with this arrangement. Of course, he wanted a part of the business was still recorded on him, but even if half of the business and will be recorded on his future wife, then in the divorce at least a quarter will be given to him in accordance with current procedures. This part will be quite enough for him to live well and receive some regular income. But even in that case, if the profit will not be so attractive, you can simply sell a quarter of the company and then get a very decent amount of money, which will cover all his whims for at least the next 10 years. And then you can come up with something new, or on the proceeds of the money just to invest in any business, which will gradually develop and still bring some profitability to Tony for a very long period of time. All that remains is to play the wedding, get a gift, and then declare his decision to divorce. or even make it so that the girl left him on her own because he was not so white and fluffy as she believed. But thoughts of divorce later. Now the most important thing is to get a share and play the wedding ceremony as soon as possible. In general, the wedding was quite calm, just as the newlyweds expected. There were no fights or debauch, despite the fact that quite a few guests were invited to the ceremony. After the end of the official part began numerous congratulations from friends and relatives. Of course, there were also gifts. But the main presentation, Tony could not wait for the father of the bride. For some reason, he constantly postponed the presentation of the gift, just said a toast, and then sat down in his seat without giving anything to the young people. It strained the guy, but he could not ask anything directly because it could negatively affect his plan. It remained to wait, and now the guests began to leave. It was getting close to dawn, and Tony decided to ask his wife about the gift from his father. "Honey, don't worry, everything is fine," replied the girl, after which she hugged her newfound husband. "Today we are resting, and tomorrow morning we'll bring the documents, which are already formalized and signed." The father just did not want to bring them to the wedding ceremony so that they did not spoil. No matter if someone spills champagne or drops food on them, and then they can be considered invalid. It's for safety reasons. "Oh, so all the documents have been drawn up, and you and I own half of the company, I understand?" he asked Katie. "That's right, darling. All the formalities have been taken care of, so we don't have to worry about getting independence and financial stability in our future. We're going to live happily ever after, just like in all those romantic movies you and I used to watch so often." In fact, Tony couldn't stand watching such a genre of movies, but it was at these moments that the guy and the girl became as close as possible, and there was an opportunity to simply and quickly understand what exactly Kathy liked. As a result, the guy reviewed several dozen such movies to fully form an idea of a potential wife and find the best approach to her. In addition, it was from the movies it became clear how best to behave with Kathy, so that she was just crazy about him. Since all the papers are signed, it remains only to decide one single moment with the divorce. For quite some time now, Tony had been interested in Kathy's best friend Ariana, who was not against socializing and even showed some interest in return. Of course, he did not say anything to his fiancée, because otherwise the relationship would be very difficult to keep. And here in the head of the guy ripened the ideal variant. He decided to just cheat on his fiancée on the first wedding night, and then she will certainly decide to divorce him immediately, because such humiliation will not tolerate any self-respecting girl. And as a result of the divorce, he would be left with the share in the company, as well as spend the night with the very beauty, which he had been trying to hit on since the moment of her appearance in the city. He pulled out his phone and texted Ariana, "Hi, I really want to spend tonight with you. Go for it. I'm sure you'll love it." At the other end of the hall, the girl's phone vibrated. Ariana looked at the screen, then toward the guy and smiled. A message came back to him. "Is it too cruel to do this on my best friend and your wife's wedding night?" Grinning, the guy replied, "I don't think it matters. I suddenly realized that the only reason I've been with Kathy all this time is because I liked you to the point of insanity. Agree to this night. I promise you that you will never forget it." There was no response from the girl for a few minutes. Then the guy's phone vibrated again and he read on the screen, "I liked you too. Okay, I'm in. Meet me at the hotel at 10 p.m. For the guy, cheating was a common thing, and therefore he wasn't even worried before going for such a thing. Moreover, he was even glad that his fiancée's best friend turned out to be such a girl. Didn't have to figure out who to spend this night with to definitely get a divorce. It remains only to realize everything planned and to declare home only in the morning. And a few hours later, Tony just disappeared from the solemn marriage ceremony, just like the best friend of the bride. No matter how much the guests tried to find them, and no matter how many times Tony's parents called his phone, all to no avail. It was clear to Katie and her parents. They made the decision to stay at the young couple's house so that the girl wouldn't be so sad and lonely, and to wait together for the guy who had done such an ugly thing on the wedding day. Tony didn't show up until the morning. He walked into the house he and Kathy shared, the one they'd been renting for the past couple months, and from the very doorstep he declared, "Learn from your friend, Log. I didn't even know what she could do in bed. That's a night I won't forget for a long time, but a night with you I wouldn't have remembered. I'm glad I didn't stay with you, or I would have had to sleep. I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it anyway." He grinned, and then he looked at the papers on the table. "Oh, I see your parents kept their promise and made a gift for our wedding. That's really good. Now we won't have to work. We can live the life we want and not deny ourselves anything," Tony said, and then went to the documents to look at them. But Kathy grabbed the papers off the table, not giving him a chance to even look at them. He only grinned, then raised a snide look at the girl and said, "Honey, don't forget, it's not only your share, it's our common one. We are husband and wife. We will have everything in common with you now. And my mistresses will also be common, because it is already tired of constantly sharing a bed with a log." It was obvious how unpleasant it was for Katie to hear all this. But she stood silent, did not answer anything, and just looked at the guy who was behaving terribly. She didn't recognize the man she had fallen so deeply in love with. She did not understand how in one night the attitude can change so much, and how you can swear in love yesterday, and today say that he will constantly bring mistresses because his wife does not suit him. You're wrong. We're not husband and wife. Today I'm filing for divorce, and you will be left with nothing, and I will continue my happy and carefree life. But only without you, said Katie in a calm voice. I suddenly realized that I do not need such a husband, who behind my back communicates with my best friend and cheated on me with her on our first wedding night. I realized that I don't want to live with you, and my father was right to be wary of our relationship. I wish I had listened to him from the beginning, and now I will have 2 stamps in my passport that will constantly remind me of the mistake I made. It's a good thing we didn't have kids together, or you would have ruined other people's lives. Anyway, honey, you can pack up your things and go on your way. The divorce letter will come to your place of registration, and I hope that you and I will never cross paths again. Kathy folded her arms across her chest, expecting the guy to go packing, but he grinned again, after which he practically said with a laugh,